Shortly after Belarus presidential vote in August 2020, a wave of protest shook the country. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets against the election of authoritarian President Alexander Lukashenko, claiming the results were falsified and calling for his ouster. By mid-November 2020, police had detained over 25,000 people, according to Human Rights Watch. 3 years later, in December 2023, individuals who worked as observers during the 2020 presidential elections have been subject to searches. According to Belarusian human rights center VOANews, the State Security Committee is behind the campaign. Human rights activists say those who worked as election observers have had their phones inspected and are being warned about potential criminal charges for, quote, promoting extremist activity. Opposition members believe these intimidation attempts are directly linked to the 2020 elections.
It's a known and quite a standard intimidation tactic. Parliamentary elections are scheduled to be held in Belarus in February, and we obviously call them elections without a choice. We've initiated a campaign of so-called civil disobedience. We encourage Belarusians not to vote and not take part in that farce.
The Belarusian Security Commission did not respond to VOA's request for comment. In late November, the homes of several opposition figures, Coordination Council members, and their relatives were subject to searches. Belarus Investigative Committee said the searches were part of a criminal investigation into the activities of the Coordination Council and confirmed there were more than 100 suspects.
Lukashenko plans to organize the so-called elections, but it would be more accurate to call it the day of deputy and parliament appointments. Lukashenko will himself decide who will be in the new parliament and who of his people will be in city councils. He understands the society's mood hasn't changed, and that makes him uneasy.
In anticipation of the February elections, Belarus has set up nearly 1,400 territorial and precinct election commissions. But authorities have not yet made the list of members public. The country's Central Electoral Commission says it is protecting members' personal data. Since the protests that followed the 2020 elections, all opposition and independent parties have been essentially liquidated, and many party leaders are in prison. And although the Israel-Hamas conflict and Russia's invasion of Ukraine have made Belarus' political agenda less prominent, its opposition leaders are working hard to make sure the world still pays attention.
I think a strategic dialogue has been established with the United States that will continue in future years, and particularly between the Belarusian democracy movement and the US Department of State. This is a very progressive step, and it's something that was not necessarily expected at the beginning of the year, because the United States seemed to be completely focused on Ukraine and not giving much attention to Belarus.
In December, US Senator Jin Shahin introduced the bipartisan Belarus Democracy, Human Rights and Sovereignty Act of 2023. The bill would condemn Lukashenko's support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, recognize Svetlana Tikhanovskaya as the democratic leader of Belarus, and pledge to support Belarus independent media outlets. The bill also includes a provision to establish a special envoy for Belarus. Maxim Adams, VOA News, Washington.